Thank you and welcome everyone to this month's Connect webinar. Before we get started with this, during the presentation, you're able to ask questions to our panelists during the presentation. They'll be able to answer them. And at the end of the presentation, we will take live Q&A. The topic today is the Remedy 19.02 and Helix ITSM 19.02 feature release overview. And Peter Adams will be taking us through this content. I'll turn it over to you, Peter.
Thank you, Greg, and welcome as well from my side, and really on behalf of the entire product organization, welcome to this overview webinar where we want to present what's new in the 19.02 release. It gives me an opportunity to thank everybody on the product team side. There's a lot of people who have worked very hard on getting these releases out. On the product management team, which is all joining this call here, as well as R&D and QA and many other folks within BMC. And I also want to thank anybody on your side, customer and partner side, who has helped contribute to this release, right, through ideas, through one-on-one discussions, through participating in the beta test. We really appreciate that you take the time and help us make the Remedy releases better. We're doing things a little bit different this time. If you recall, in the past when we did these overview presentations, we usually had a number of the product management team members present and switch between live demos, presentation, etc. We got the feedback that some of this was a bit disruptive, the frequent switches. So we are trying something new today, and I'll walk you through the enhancements, both in terms of slides as well as some recorded demos that should give you an impression how this actually looks like in real life. And again, we want to see whether that is a better experience, so we'd appreciate your feedback at the end of the webinar when you fill out the survey, how this compares to previous ones and whether this flow is better, and then we can adjust again for the future. Also, again, I want to emphasize that we do answer questions during the session, so please make use of the WebEx Q&A function here. That's the best way to get your additional questions answered as I present in a certain topic, but we'll have a bit of time at the end as well about answering questions live as well. So I'm starting out with a very high-level overview, and then we go into the different areas that we want to present here. This slide shows what we are updating about the 19.02 release, and that is both on-premise. That's what you see here on the left side. It covers basically the core Remedy ITSM stack as you know it, including CMDB, Remedy single sign-on, smart reporting, ITSM apps, of course, Smart IT, our user experience. But we have an equivalent release for our SaaS offering, which is now branded BMC Helix ITSM. I think you're all aware that we have introduced BMC Helix as our brand name for our SaaS offering. Those components that are exclusively in SaaS are, of course, here on the right side as well, with BMC Helix Cognitive Automation and BMC Helix MultiCloud Service Management as add-on modules. And as the slide shows, these add-on modules can be used in combination with on-premise deployment here. So again, we use Remedy for the on-premise deployments and BMC Helix ITSM for the SaaS deployments. Functionally, again, those things are the same. We talk a lot about using the same code line. Of course, again, deployments work different in SaaS, and the overall experience we believe is better in SaaS, as you don't have to worry about upgrades, etc. But again, from a functional perspective, these are equivalent when it comes to the core ITSM functionality. And during the course of the presentation, I won't always repeat both Remedy and Helix ITSM to say that these are available on both sides. I will frequently just use Helix ITSM as a stand-in for both. If there is functionality that's specific to on-premise or SaaS, I'll call it out, but by and large, I'll just use one name as a stand-in for both, right? Now, with a suite like Remedy ITSM or Helix ITSM, which contains many different components, right? And with a very large customer base that we have, it's quite normal that we have to touch many different aspects in each release. Still, typically you can identify a theme for each release. And the theme, for this 19.02 release cycle was for us really to continue transforming ITSM by adding cognitive capabilities and by continuing to build out and merging new ways of working into the classic ITSM processes, right? Both of those are not completely new, but this is certainly a significant step forward, this 19.02 release in that same direction. And what makes this really special for me is, coincidentally, ITIL 4 was released at the same day, end of February. And I think it's a good reflection, while we haven't specifically designed it for ITIL 4, it's interesting to see that the ideas behind ITIL 4 very much correlate with, what we're doing around our Helix ITSM suite, right? The idea to take on concepts from DevOps and Agile and Lean IT practices, right, and merging them into the general ITSM practices that have been established for a while around incident and change management, right? That's ultimately very similar to what we're doing here with our ITSM suite, right? And when you read a bit up on ITIL Foundation and the concepts here, right, a lot of these, for example, the 7 guiding principles that were introduced as part of ITIL 4, they correlate very closely, and they show, again, ideas from DevOps and Agile merging into the classic ITSM practices. And again, that's ultimately very similar to what we are trying to do with our expansion into, KCS and swarming. You'll hear about that and many other areas. So again, that alignment with ITIL, what we call ITIL 4 ready, is there. It's not yet there's no formal tool certification available as of today, but we certainly expect to align very well with anything that comes out at the ITIL 4 level, because again, that focus on teamwork, collaboration, automation, is still is absolutely there on our side, while still using the same good governance and reliability and stability and security, right? So again, that for me is the characteristic of this release, this kind of close alignment with the rollout of ITIL. And then when it comes to the specific capabilities that we introduced, we want to really present this here in 4 topics around smart reporting, smart IT, multi-cloud service management and cognitive, around administration and operations, and around platform compatibility. And the last 2 of the topics here that we want to go through are a bit more focused around on-premise, because again, in SaaS, BMC takes care of, compatibility, infrastructure, upgrades, and operations. So our SaaS customers don't have to worry about that. But it's still very relevant for our on-premise customers, and we continue to invest in those on-premise specific topics as we discussed. Right, we support both deployment models very much, and continue to invest in aspects on both sides. Right. So let me go through these 5 areas in a bit more detail that really reflect what we've delivered here in terms of innovation in the 19.02 release. And let's start out with smart reporting here. For smart reporting, 19.02 is really a significant new release, because we've updated the underlying smart reporting software to the latest major release of Yellowfin, right? So again, with that you have a rich set of new capabilities just from the fact that we've adopted the latest version of Yellowfin. Plus, we build additional capabilities on our side, right? We don't just plug the Yellowfin software into our suite, but again, interact. There's quite a bit of echo here. It seems to have gone away. So again, we don't just plug it in and give you the software, right? We really integrate this well and build, connections, how to access data, et cetera, et cetera. So again, the investment has not just happened by taking up the latest Yellowfin version, but by expanding, for example, our AI JDBC layer that allows you to pull in data, and I'll touch on that a bit more. So quite, again, a significant release. One of the capabilities, for example, that comes with the latest Yellowfin versions is this new feature called Stories, and that's very much in line with the storyboard concept. If you're familiar with that, it has already been around. It's a way to communicate results, charts, ultimately that you generate here in smart reporting to a user audience. Storyboarding was focused on a kind of presentation style communication, so you can build slide decks and insert live content, so to speak, into the slide deck. And Stories is very similar in that it allows you to create blocks, and you see a screenshot here within the system that includes, active live charts that are not just images, but you can interact with, right? So again, that supports overall the option to communicate the results, not just to generate charts and have users look at it, but to communicate that in a very efficient way with some additional context around it, and to narrate, basically, not just show the data, but to narrate what's going on here. Right? There's other enhancements, again, that are coming with the release around improving export and importing between to exchange configuration between environments. Again, we won't go into a lot of details here, but I do want to call that out as part of smart reporting. Now, as I stated before, besides just integrating the latest Yellowfin software, we've looked a lot into how can we enhance the data access portion of smart reporting to enable you, our customers, to build more powerful reports. And one of the capabilities that we've built here is to improve our AI JDBC layer to allow you to use database functions in order to calculate fields and then use them in a corresponding report. So that again allows you to build more powerful reports ultimately, because you can leverage these native database functions that are often, again, very powerful and rich, and can use them as you build the corresponding set of reports. So in order to show that, again, I have a little demo here that we want to go through. Let's say we pick here the incident view. As you can see on the left side, there's a lot of different data fields that come in out of the box, but maybe you need an additional field here that is not available out of the box. So let's say you want to use a database function that allow you to calculate the year of a certain date field, right? And there's a corresponding database function available. You can, define a calculated field that makes use of this database function, right? So again, that allows you to build very powerful things here. And as you can see, there's a validate button that helps you validate whether this SQL construct, so to speak, is valid. And then once it's validated, you can use it. And then once you build these calculated fields, you can, of course, use them in building any kind of report. We show this with a little example here. Let's say you have a report about incidents and their submit date. Now you can use these calculated fields when building the report, and again, leveraging the entire richness of these database functions as you build reports, right? So again, that expands quite significantly the power of what type of reports you can build with smart reporting. The second very exciting function I want to focus on here is called automated insight. And this is really a first step where we embark on cognitive analytics as part of our smart reporting offering here. The idea here is that, again, with automated insights, the system would use cognitive algorithms to look at the data in the system. Typically you have to configure it up front, and then to look at specific metrics. And then this automated insight gives you additional explanation about the data, even in a natural language narrative. Here you can see that in the screen pop-up on the right side here, and we'll see a demo in a second. So again, that helps you ultimately to get faster insight about the data in a very convenient and easy way, and communicate that and share that with other people, right? And this analytical capability can even be used as you create new reports. It gives some additional guidance as well here. So again, I want to show quickly how this looks like. So here's a report that shows the number of incidents as a key metrics related to different assigned groups here, and you can see that in the table below. There's the assigned groups here. We also track business service and who the assignee is, and ultimately, again, the idea here is to get deeper insight into those numbers, right? So these are the fields that we kind of ran the analysis on. You have to pre-select those and enable the feature. It does not is not enabled out of the box. But then once you again pick the corresponding fields, run the statistical analysis, the cognitive algorithms, then you have these two options here. One is explain and compare. And explain again does mostly look at statistically significant data and explains that in that natural language narrative. Compares also looks at correlations between different metrics here, right? So again, we can invoke that now from the chart, and then you'll see as a result, you see different type of charts and explanations come up, and you see there's three different ones for this kind of incident data set that we selected here. Now, in this phase, again, you can review these insights that the system generated. In this case, for example, there's a correlation between submit date and the number of incidents, but maybe it's a test system and somebody submitted lots of incidents on a specific date. Maybe that's not so relevant, so you can switch it off, right? You can select whether you want to keep such analysis or not, right? On the other hand, there is a statistical correlation between the number of incidents and business service. Again, it highlights that in the chart. You can see that in this, again, natural language narrative here, which are the top three business services that generate the most incidents. It gives this additional insight and interpretation of the data in the system. And again, ultimately, the goal is to get faster insight of what's happening around these metrics, like the number of incidents, which is the lead metric here, right? So again, the third one is not interesting. Again, you can add some additional comments as you select the assisted insight here with the tool, and then you can publish that, so to speak, with the corresponding incident-related charts, right? So this is, again, a very easy and convenient way to provide additional context and insight about certain metrics, let's say on the incident side, but of course you can apply that to any kind of view in the system, right? So again, very exciting. I always compare it a little bit. Some of the hotel booking systems have a similar cognitive analysis and a natural language narrative about, let's say, they take the hotel ratings and then they construct stories around it. To some degree, it's the equivalent here for the IT world, right, where you can create narratives around the data in your system here. So very, very exciting. And again, the first step into more cognitive analytics of the ITSM data, right? So again, major release on the smart reporting side with lots of exciting new capabilities. I want to move on. Next topic is Smart IT and the CMDB UI, that introduces a number of new user experience enhancements. And it's also the first time that we start rolling out capability around a new concept called swarming. And again, this is one of these examples where we introduce innovative new ways of working inside the ITSM suite without, again, losing any of the rich capabilities that we have. It's, consider this an augmentation of the existing capabilities, right? Swarming ultimately is a new concept that kind of originated in the customer support area. We actually use it inside of BMC for our own customer support as well. And it's a new way of organizing resources for, again, customer support. And it's less about, a strict hierarchical structure, right, with level 0, level 1, level 2, potentially level 3, right? This kind of tiered support where you have queues and tickets are assigned from, tier 1 into tier 2 into tier 3. This kind of linear queue-based individual assignment. It's more an approach where you look at leverage the power of a group collaboration in addressing these customer issues, right? And swarming is one of these new concepts, again, that have made it into ITIL 4. It's mentioned as part of the incident management practice. Also made it into other frameworks like VariSM, right? But again, today it's mentioned as part of the ITIL 4 Foundation, as part of the incident management practice, and our own, John Hall from our product management team is very active in this area and is also a co-author around ITIL 4, among other things in this area, right? So I'm using an example here. Swarming, ultimately very similar to DevOps, puts a lot of emphasis on autonomy. The teams can organize themselves to some degree, and so it's not a absolute prescriptive way. You have to do it this way. Companies can organize how they do swarming to some degree on their own. I want to give an example here just to convey the concept based on how we organize swarming at BMC from a customer support perspective, right? So again, once a case comes in here, typically, there's a small subset of cases that go into what we call the severity number 1 swarm, right? And you can correlate that to some degree with major incident management, which has always been traditionally been a very collaborative approach, right? When there's a major incident, typically you set up war rooms and you collaborate between people, and that's no different here around the severity number 1 swarms, right? But that's only a small portion of the cases that come in or of the tickets that come in, right? The majority of the tickets really are looked at as part of a local dispatch swarm, and that's kind of a scheduled swarm that happens multiple times during the day, where a team of cross-functional players, also with different expertise, looks at the incoming caseload, and it's intentional that they do some cherry picking, so the things that they can solve very quickly are supposed to be solved quickly, and they'll do this and resolve it right away. And then again, anything that does require a bit more collaboration from the product experts then would be transferred over to the product teams. Again, it's important that it's not an individual assigned to it, but it's a kind of a cross-functional representation of different teams who work on a ticket, right? And again, that the group collaboration has multiple aspects, not just in terms of the speed of resolution. We've seen quite a bit of improvement in that area, but also in terms of know-how transfer, right? So you do intentionally want to construct the teams so that you have experienced people, less experienced people, people from different technology expertise, and there's a lot of implicit know-how transfer that is overall beneficial for the organization, right? And that again applies to the dispatch swarm, but also to the backlog swarms that you want to have a kind of a mixed audience here, right? and again, quite significant improvements around outcomes when it comes to the speed of solving issues that come in, right? So with our 19.02 release, we embark, and it's really a first step here to embark into the swarming, and we also sometimes refer to it as chat ops, because that's a similar concept, a collaborative approach to ops activity to resolve certain critical incidents. And it's from our perspective a first step. We have quite some interesting ideas in this area to go further. And in that first step, we kind of enabled that collaboration and swarming inside of Smart IT, inside the chat functionality of Smart IT, to be specific. And among the things that we introduce here, for example, is a command line concept inside the chat option here, so that you can execute certain commands, get contextual information without having to navigate, to the different screens in Smart IT, and even get suggestions again who to collaborate with, right? So I want to show that again in a demo here. This is an incident. Let's say you're assigned to work on a specific incident but need help, and you want to do more an ad hoc swarming and ad hoc collaboration around it. As mentioned before, this kind of chat interaction now has an option to do command lines, right? And there's different command lines supported that help to again get information from within that chat interaction, without having to kind of go back and forth between different screens. And so an example here is similar incidents that would list similar incidents in the system compared to the one that you currently look at, right? And then again, one of the commands is swarming, and as you can see, the system is suggesting a set of different team members who have worked on similar tickets in the past. And you can see here that Mary Mann happens to be online. That's part of the color here of the icon. And then by clicking on it, you can invite Mary to the corresponding conversation very, very quickly, right? Without having to search for the name, etc. And then you can start the conversation. Now, Mary receives the same invite here, and will open a similar chat window, but she may not be exactly on that ticket. And so again, Mary now has the option. I'll use the same screen here, but now has the option to, within the chat session, without having to go to a different screen or the screen she was on, get information about this incident, right? Or find out about relevant knowledge articles. So the contextual information that we provide, on the incident screen itself is now also exposed in the corresponding chat interaction, and that will help us quite a bit as well once we start transferring some of that chat-based collaboration to outside systems, which we plan to do as part of our roadmap. So once you are in an outside system, then this kind of interaction with the ticket itself is even more valuable, right? You wouldn't have to leave this external chat tool in order to get insight about the ticket. You could stay within the chat interaction and kind of get information about the ticket, or eventually we plan to even update it, right? So again, today in that first step, we focus that interaction on Smart IT, consider it as a first step towards our chat ops and swarming strategy that we want to embark on and build out over the next few releases. Aside from this new concept of swarming, of course, we continue to build out our capabilities in the Smart IT area, right? We still have to implement a number of functions in Smart IT. One of the key ones that has been asked for by many customers, for example, is our copy change function, which we're introducing in this 19.02 release. But again, there's other enhancements that we've implemented in Smart IT 19.02, for example, accessing the knowledge console with just viewer permissions, or additional information in the activity stream. For example, if the status reason is changing, that's exposed as part of the system events in the activity timeline, right? So again, I won't go through each and every one, but let's have a quick look at the copy change functionality here. Let's say you have an existing change request, upgrade server hard drive, for example, and you need to submit a similar change request, a new one. You can use this existing one basically to copy it and create a new change request from here, right? And there's a new copy change function that's visible as an action on the screen. And you have, as a user, the option to select which of the content should be copied over from the existing change request to the new one. So you see here the different choices, impacted areas, documents, related changes, tasks, only manual ones or automatic ones. So there's different options, but still a very streamlined, easy to understand interaction. And then from there, you create the new change request, but you have the option A to change certain content after the copy was created. So that's one of the reasons why we immediately jump to the edit screen. The other part is that we want to enable answering risk questions. So we consciously decided not to copy the risk over because that may have changed, and it's an important part of the change control process that you assess the risk for each change individually, right? And so again, you do have to do that risk assessment, and then again, that's a very quick way to create a new type of change request in the system, right? Of course, the existing options like using a change template, etc., are still there. But again, this has been a commonly asked for functionality in Smart IT, and we're very excited that we can deliver this now in Smart IT 19.02. The next feature I want to talk about is something that is particularly beneficial for service provider customer, but there may be use cases even for enterprise customers. This is an idea that from within Smart Recorder, you'd be able to create call log records. So there are sometimes situations where you have to create corresponding log records about an interaction, but you don't want to create an incident or a service request to basically log that somebody called and hung up, or that somebody called and it was a transfer, right? So some companies I know have corresponding incident templates, and they use those incident templates to log a hang-up call or something like that. But in some cases, there are requirements that you log this outside of the standard ticket types. And with this feature, we are now enabling companies to do that. So also here, let me please walk through a quick demo how this looks like. This does require some customization on the backend remedy system side. Ultimately what this feature does, it creates an entry into a common form. You can define different types of events that you want to be able to log that show up here in the menu that is highlighted. And then, once those entries are created in this form, you can pick this up and, run any kind of custom workflow that you want for this kind of log data, right? So again, let me walk through this very quickly here. Give me 1 second. Okay, let me walk through this again. So here you can see Smart Recorder, and as you can see, you can immediately, once this feature is enabled, create call log records. So in case you take a call, you start out with the Smart Recorder, you potentially enter the customer name in there, but then the customer says, oh, I want to transfer to somebody else. You can log these kind of events. Again, that writes it into a standard form on the remedy server, and then correspondingly you can pick it up from there and create any kind of custom workflow that works off, but at least it's exposed as part of Smart Recorder for your frontline service desk staff, right? Last but not least, around Smart IT, we continue to build out our UI tailoring capabilities. This dynamic provider action concept that we introduced in the past for incident management has now also been expanded into change requests, work orders, and tasks. So again, dynamic provider actions are basically provider action, custom remedy server workflow that you can trigger, but it's triggered automatically based on certain conditions. You wouldn't have to, click an action button or so. It's triggered dynamically as part of once a condition is met. And again, that is a helpful capability to kind of replicate functionality that you may have custom built on your MITIA ITSM system. So again, we expanded this now into a change, work order, and task. Plus, there's a few other UI tailoring or configurability options now available with Smart IT. For example, you can define a default landing page when the user logs into Smart IT. Maybe you don't want them to end up on the dashboard page, but jump directly to the ticket console. That is an option now. Plus, you can define whether the public checkbox in the activity timeline when you enter a note, as you know, there's a public checkbox. You can define what the default setting should be, right? Some customers want, by default, all comments to be public unless the user unchecks the box, right? And some want it by default to be internal unless the public checkbox is checked, right? And so that configuration option is now available for you, and you can set that accordingly. The other part of our UX investment, of course, is our CMDB UI, where we continue to build out the capabilities to eventually retire Atrium Explorer, our Flash-based UI, legacy UI in that area. The key enhancements for the new CMDB UI in this release, 19.02, is around create actions or write actions. So not only can we display the service model and the CI information, now you can start editing the information about CIs or creating new CI instances or new relationships in the service model correspondingly. So again, that's the big change to previous versions of the CMDB UI. Of course, once you start doing edits, it needs to follow the standard practice of writing it in the sandbox, reconciliation, etc., etc. So that is supported with this approach. And again, overall, it continues to build out the capabilities so that eventually we can kind of use this for all of the CMDB administration and configuration management related capability. There's other CMDB enhancements. I'll get to that in the administrative and operational side. But again, that's the key enhancements we did on the user experience side. Next topic is MultiCloud service management, our integration hub, our intelligent integration hub, as well as expanded capabilities in the cognitive ITSM area. So MultiCloud service management, as you know, is again the integration points between Remedy ITSM on-premise or Helix ITSM systems in the cloud, as well as external systems. This could be either Jira systems from an agile development system. That's a common use case, actually the one that draws most interest in our customer base. But it could also be external ticketing systems, for example, that a cloud provider uses, like Amazon, right? So you could broker tickets using this module over into support tools from Amazon, for example, right? From AWS. Specifically around Jira, we have a rich set of interactions to exchange tickets on the remedy side, change requests, incidents, problems, and now in this 19.02 release, also work orders with corresponding user stories or issues, as the generic term is used on the Jira side. In Jira, right, whether it's a bug or a defect or a user story that represents an enhancement, it's very powerful and flexible how you map corresponding tickets on the remedy side over into the Jira world, right? And again, all of that fully automated based on certain rules that you define without any coding, right? It's a low code, no code integration approach, right? So again, what is new in 19.02 is that we support this interaction now also for work orders. You can translate those into Jira user stories or defects. But we also expanded that interaction based on customer feedback in other areas. For example, if you need to resubmit records, or once you build a connection between a corresponding, let's say, Jira record and a change or problem or work order on the remedy side, right? Sometimes maybe you want to dissociate the two records from each other and separate them, so to speak. So again, aside from building this out for work order, we implemented a number of other functional enhancements. As we hear, again, interest from the customer base around these integration topics, we are able to very quickly react on this and build out the capabilities. And it's a very comprehensive, very powerful solution now that, again, differentiates from other data exchange approaches by allowing customers to see the third-party ticket information even within Smart IT, right? That kind of UI interaction. Right? So again, we continue to build that out, and in every release we have new exciting new capabilities here. On the same line, we talked a lot about cognitive automation as part of our remedy suite. Just to recap, ultimately what we're doing here is leveraging BMC Helix Cognitive Automation, which is our machine learning service, to implement use cases in the ITSM area. The key ones that we build out of the box are today around auto-categorizing tickets, which helps you to auto-assign or auto-route incidents to the right groups with a high quality, and avoid that tickets bounce around. Or you can use it also to analyze inbound emails, and that's a very exciting area because it really saves a lot of manual work that somebody would have to invest to analyze, what such an inbound email is about, right? Even if you create a ticket in Remedy using the inbound email engine, somebody would still have to look at the content of that incident and assign it to the right group. That now can all be automated with this cognitive analysis, right? So quite a cost saver here. And as stated before, you also can implement custom use cases. And I want to emphasize again, the machine learning service ultimately is integrated at the platform level. So both within Helix ITSM or Remedy ITSM, the connection is done at the platform level. So not only can you use the out-of-the-box use cases that we implemented for email processing or auto-categorization, you can also build your own custom use cases that leverage this machine learning service. So you can train the machine learning service with any kind of data in the Remedy system from any form, and you can then as well use it with any kind of custom workflow. And again, you can leverage that for custom use cases as well, right? Now, what we did in 19.02 here is to further build out this cognitive email analysis and processing. Again, that's where we see customers spend a lot of manual work, and ultimately we believe that's a big cost savings opportunity to let a cognitive service not just process and analyze the inbound email and create it with the right template. Again, we had some of that before. We expanded that now to work order as a new functionality, and it's available again now for incidents, change requests, and work orders. But now in this release, we also have implemented an option to auto-respond to the submitter who sent the email with a pointer to a knowledge article or with a pointer to a catalog item. Let's say the cognitive system analyzes that something is really a service request rather than an incident, then the user would anyway have to fill out a certain service request and a number of questions that are associated to it. So rather than creating an incident and somebody has to close it out and tell the customer to submit a ticket instead or service request instead, And now we can generate this response automatically, again, based on this cognitive analysis. So again, let's look at how this looks like. This is, again, the email client. Let's say a user, in this case, it's Pradeep, creates a corresponding email in the system and sends it to the service desk. And in this case, the user Pradeep has a certain issue, right? So again, the user constructs an email, sends it to the service desk. That's still a very commonly offered options, as it's so convenient for many of the users. And in this case, they ask us to replace the company provided mobile phone, right? So again, as typical, it's just a one-liner. That's, often the challenge with these emails, right? Typically, you'd have to go back and then ask a lot of questions around. Then it turns out it's a service request. In this case, the cognitive analysis, the cognitive engine has analyzed the content of the email and then can point directly to a service catalog item and say, this is really a request. You have to fill out a certain number of questions in order to submit this, right? Without this information, we cannot really do anything, right? And so that's a very convenient way to automate the entire response process without having to go through manual work to phone or email the customer, right? The system does it automatically for the IT organization, right? So again, big cost savings here that we see, and ultimately, just to summarize, how the flow is for this kind of cognitive email analytics and processing, right? In the end, the first step that we do is to evaluate if it's really, let's say, if it's really an incident, right? If this matches, if it turns out it's a service request and matches something in the service catalog, right? Then we would respond with a pointer to the catalog item, because again, these service requests typically require questions that have to be filled out, and there's no way around it, right? The second part, if it's really an issue, right, the first option is to respond to the user with a knowledge article, a pointer to a knowledge article. Again, maybe the user can then solve the problem themselves. And, we are looking for future releases then to let the user auto-close, so to speak, the incident, right? Again, ultimately, we want to take as much out of manual work as possible here, right? Now, if a ticket has to be created, if there's no other way to respond to it, then, again, the system, the cognitive algorithm would pick the right template. That saves a lot of work because, not only would the standard fields be filled out, but the ticket typically then is assigned to the right group automatically. And then, if there's no template that fits, at least the system will attempt to auto-categorize it, because then, again, you can at least you can assign it to the right group here, right? So that's the sequence of evaluations that we do. And again, goal is ultimately to take out a lot of manual work of the system, right? So I'm moving on to the administrative side. So again, these next two topics are a bit more centric around on-premise deployments, as in the SaaS world. Obviously, BMC takes care of most of the operations, upgrades, and infrastructure things. Now, there are some application administration topics that may still be relevant from a SaaS perspective. Now, there are also options to handle that or to hand off that through managed services. But in many cases, our SaaS customers do the application administration themselves, and they would benefit also from this capability here. We improved the approval mappings capability for knowledge management quite a bit in this release 19.02. If you recall, before the system mainly allowed to create approval mappings for knowledge management based on categorization, product and ops categorization, right? So basically, for differently categorized articles, you could put in different approvers. Now, with the 19.02 release, you have a lot more criteria that allows you to define who the approver should be for a knowledge article, right? You could drive it from the article template type. So you can say, how two articles are approved separately than, problem solutions or something like that, right? You can drive the approver based on owner, company or owner group, or based on article language. So let's say German articles would be approved by a different person than English language articles, right? You can approve it based on region, site-to-site group, or whether it's internal or externally visible articles. Those are all factors now that can be used as you define these approval rules. And again, it's a much richer set of configuration capabilities for determining who should be the approver for certain articles. Right? Second topic I want to talk about is CMDB archiving. That again expands or builds on the standard remedy archiving capability that we had introduced in Remedy 9, if you recall. And very similar to that ticket archiving, the CMDB archiving allows you to define rules or a query that basically defines which CIs should be archived under which conditions, right? And then, once these rules fire for certain CIs, then these CIs are basically archived into separate forms with the goal ultimately to reduce resource consumption, to make queries faster, et cetera, et cetera. Now, again, you can define the rules, retention period, etc., as you want. And again, we also implemented it in a way that the archiving itself doesn't impact the overall operations of the system here, right? But again, that's a very powerful capability that allows you to, again, archive CI data that's no longer needed from the main system, right, and put it into archive forms. Right? Other CMDB enhancement that we did in 19.02 are expansion of Atrium integrator capability, and then expansion of the common data model here, right? So there's new attributes around cost flow or cost apportionment around for relationships, and then location attributes again added to the relationship type. So again, these are refinement to the common data model that we felt are important in support of our key new use cases. Occasionally, again, when it comes to cloud discovery, as the technology changes that our customers are using, we need to make corresponding adjustments in the data model, and these are some refinements that we did in 19.02. REST API continues to be a key enhancement or key integration option, rather, of our ITSM suite, and it covers, again, platform, CMDB, as well as ITSM applications. So we continue to invest in that area. Two things that we released in 19.02 is, number one, is we expanded on the REST API documentation. In some areas, again, we had Swagger documentation, but not in all of them. So that was expanded quite a bit in the 19.02 release. And then in the past, the REST API for the platform specifically mostly focused on creating entries in a form. And now we can also get information about the form itself, the metadata, right? Which fields, for example, are available, etc. And that allows for implementing certain additional use cases, right? So very exciting new capability that further allows you to build more powerful integrations with the Remedy system. Right? And then last but not least, topic around compatibility, again, mostly relevant for on-premise customers, as you stated. Now with 19.02 release, we are for the first time introducing support of OpenJDK. This is, of course, in reaction to the changes that Oracle has made around Java licensing. So with the 19.02 release, we now support Java 11. That's one, but also again the standard Oracle JDK distribution that we had supported for quite a while, but now also OpenJDK. And with OpenJDK support, we really want to ensure that customers can continue to leverage a Java platform version that they don't have to pay for, right? So we expect that we will continue to support latest OpenJDK versions as they come out with our software, right? While at the same time, if a customer wants to stay on, for example, Oracle JDK 8, which is the version that we've traditionally supported, they can still do so. We did not drop that from the release. And if somebody who says that they want to have that stability and want to keep these long-term versions, so to speak, then they can do so, right? So again, that is a very important topic that we want to enable our customers to continue to use this free Java version, and that we enable that through support of OpenJDK, right? But aside from that, we of course always look at our compatibility matrix and make updates to it. In this round, we are supporting now Microsoft SQL Server 2017 and Oracle Database 18c, and also Microsoft Exchange Server 2016. Those were items that we added in the release. Now, to close out the feature overview, again, there's not enough time in the day to talk about every feature and every detail. Aside from the things that are presented here on slides, there's a lot more in the release itself. And as always, you see all the details in the release notes for the different modules and components, right? For example, around Smart IT, we did some additional work around in-app survey, which allows you or your users to send feedback to BMC around certain interactions. We are now supporting a new graphic library for flashboards that are used in the MITIA user interface mostly, and of course that's all in support of taking Flash out of the Remedy ITSM suite. With this graphic library, now you have a rich and modern HTML5-based library to, again, visualize flashboard metrics, right, without having to use a Flash-based graphics library, right? There's improvements around D2P. Again, those are more administrative related. For example, you can now add language pack to a Remedy system through a D2P package. That's important and to some degree also needed from a container perspective, as you generally don't have installers anymore. We needed to have a mechanism to add language packs at a later time. We looked at performance improvements for D2P. We looked at, again, logging enhancements so that you can find out what's happening in the D2P area, because, again, this kind of deployment application is really our key mechanism that we expect to use for both, kind of DevOps scenarios where we have to transfer something from development to production, but also, as you know, we're using it for patch installation, for ITSM app upgrades. It's really a pervasively used mechanism and a very fast one that is for deploying things in a Remedy environment, and we want to make sure that it's again fully built out and reliable and can be easily troubleshooted as well, right? There are a number of RSSO enhancements. I didn't go into a lot of detail there, whether it's about export-import utility or configuration around proxies and gateways. As you can see on the right side, a number of enhancements. Even within MultiCloud service management, again, there's additional enhancements that we didn't have the chance to touch on. And then, of course, we continue to invest in containers here on the operations and support side. We continue to expose containers today only in the SaaS world as we continue to build out our automation, our best practices, our capabilities, right? We, for example, added better support for virtual chat as a component in the container world and certain plugins. So we are still building out this entire ecosystem, and that's why, again, today we focus this purely on our SaaS deployments. And then again, we continue to support other enhancements around performance when it comes to role-level security, supportability, etc. So again, overall, you get the message that there's a rich set of capabilities beyond just the highlights that I presented here in the presentation today, right, and showed in some of the demos. So with that, let me summarize again where we are overall with our ITSM solution, right? So as you know, we talk a lot about Helix ITSM, and we really believe, ultimately for many customers, a cloud deployment is the best experience for them to leverage the rich set of capabilities that we have. Of course, we continue to build out our on-premise capabilities. You saw some of the features that we released that are specific for on-premise administration or operations, and continued update on compatibility. But again, we continue to believe that SaaS deployments are of great interest to many customers, deliver many benefits, and of course, we continue to build out our cognitive and new way of working capabilities that we are introducing in our ITSM suite, right? Both for, again, on-premise as well as the SaaS world. So you see a lot of things going on. We continue to stay with our 6-month cycle. So in the next release, you can expect end of August with, again, more of the exciting new capabilities. And then a few references about the topics that I talked about in this presentation here. Of course, again, I have to point to the release notes. That's really your main source of detailed information. You can start out with the Remedy ITSM Suite release notes, and that has pointers to each of the individual release notes. But if you want to read up more on ITIL 4, for example, or on swarming, here are some excellent links that give you additional information about, again, ITIL 4 and swarming here. And as usually, again, we share this recording, etc., as part of the communities, right? With that, I'm at the end of my content here, and I wanted to see whether there's any questions we can discuss outside of what was already answered in the WebEx Q&A system.
Perfect. Thank you, Peter, for the presentation. At this time, Matt, can you provide directions for our callers to queue up for questions?
Certainly. If you would like to ask a question over the phone, please signal by pressing *1 on your telephone keypad. If you're using a speakerphone, please make sure your mute function is turned off to allow your signal to reach our equipment. A voice prompt on the phone line will indicate when your line is open, and please state your name before posing your question. Again, that is *1 for questions at this time. We'll pause for just a moment to allow everyone an opportunity to signal. Once again, that is *1 to ask a question. And we have no telephone questions at this time.
Okay. We'll just make sure everybody knows this recording and the Q&A will be posted a week from today's live presentation. And if there are any questions that you'd like to ask live, we'll give it one more call out for that.
Can you see if there's any questions in the WebEx system that haven't been answered? And potentially look at those as well.
Let me take a look, Peter. There is a question about any major enhancements for DWP in 19.02.
Yeah, absolutely. There's quite a number of enhancements in Digital Workplace 19.02. The most significant is that for Digital Workplace, we now have moved to a a progressive web application as a technology for implementing the UI. And that progressive web app can now be used both on the web and the browser as well as on mobile devices. So we're moving on the DWP side away from the native mobile apps and are now covering both mobile and again desktop, basically through a progressive web application, which has a number of benefits in terms of distribution, branding. We certainly heard a few challenges around that on the DWP side, and again we wanted to make sure that these things can be implemented very easily, right? Now together with that technology change, we also did some kind of UI UX improvement for digital workplace, and of course there's a rich set of functional enhancements as well that are part of the release. But again, that's probably the most significant change that you'll see in 19.02 on the digital workplace side, right? Now, again, this presentation here did not focus on digital workplace too much. I'm sure there's many other options how you can get information about what's new in digital workplace 19.02. But again, that at least gives you some of the key highlights here in that area.
Thank you, Peter. And there will be a recorded webinar that we'll be releasing on the DWP 19.02 features. And there is currently a blog post in communities that goes through those features as well. Peter, I have one more about containers availability for on-prem.
Yeah, so as I stated before, we still internally work through a number of enhancements. As we have always stated, we want to make sure that this is fully built out, rock solid, that we, not just give you the container, but all the tooling around it, the best practices, etc. We're still working through that phase, and at this point in time, we don't give a firm date when we'll be done with it, as we continue to collect experience with it. Don't expect anything in the short term here, but again, right now we want to work through all these areas so that if and when we release it, we would release it fully built out, not just give you a container and then let our customers figure out how they want to handle it. We really want to, again, enable them to be successful with all the tooling and best practices around it, right? And there's a lot of tooling, again, that goes with containers, not just the container itself, right?
Perfect, thank you. Matt, are there any other callers queued up for live questions at this time?
Yes, we do have several that did just enter the queue. We will take our first question. Please go ahead.
Hello, this is Jacob from Denmark. I have a question about the smart IT supporting existing workflow from ITSM. For instance, filters or actions that we use much of in our ITSM, and we have an issue to supporting that from Smart IT. And one of the ways we would like to support it is by the possibility to add buttons or something that could trigger these workflows. What is the plan to be more supporters of the existing ITSM instead of just adding new functionality that isn't supported by ITSM?
Yeah, I'll be happy to cover it. So first of all, any kind of filter workflow that runs on the server generally applies no matter which UI you use or even for any API interaction. So anything you'd have built custom in terms of filter workflow would still fire and applies in the same way, whether you use Smart IT as a user interface or mid-tier or, again, even API interactions, right? And correspondingly, any kind of business logic that you want to enforce throughout the system should be implemented correspondingly, right? Now, we know that many customers have built, active link workflow as well that represents more UI logic. That obviously doesn't, again, automatically translate over into the Smart IT world. But there's quite a rich set of capabilities now specifically for incident change, task and work orders to build similar UI logic that you have with active links. Let's say you want to make a field required at a certain time, based on some value in another field. That can be achieved with what we call expressions, right, on the Smart IT side. So you can, build the corresponding UI logic with logical expressions, so to speak, on the Smart IT side that reflects the corresponding logic that you've built on the Mitte UI with active links, right? So that's one option. The other option is what I talked about before, what we call provider action. So provider actions are basically an option from within Smart IT to trigger custom workflow on the Remedy server. And you can pass information from Smart IT into that custom workflow, and you can get information out of it and show that back on the Smart IT UI. And again, those provider actions can be triggered in two ways. One is with an icon or an action, so to speak. That's, I think, what you refer to. The secondly, it can be triggered automatically based on certain rules, right? So again, there is a rich set of options now, and in many use cases that companies have implemented as customization on the ITSM side can now be replicated using these mechanisms in Smart IT. And again, it can even trigger, if you have server workflow that you could reuse, these provider actions could trigger it and then get the information back into the Smart IT UI, right? Now, we're not at the end of the story here, right? I mean, we understand that companies have built entire new screens and insert them into their solution, and some of that is not fully possible today in Smart IT. So we continue to build out these tailoring capabilities. But as of today, you already have fairly powerful capabilities with these provider actions and the expression mechanism, right?
And we will move to our next caller. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
This is Rajiv from USDA NetC. I have a question on Smart ID. Can we actually make Atrium CMDB console available? We have asset management, incident management, change management, but can we have, instead of going back to the old classic view and accessing Atrium CMDB new UI from there, can we have that integrated into Smart ID?
Yeah, so on the CMDB side, as you hopefully know, we've rolled out a new CMDB UI that is a complete new innovative user experience for CMDB administration and config managers, different from the classic Atrium Explorer that has been around for quite a while. Again, we refer to this as a new CMDB UI. I think I had a screenshot in here. Let me go back to this one here quickly, just as a reminder. So you can see here, again, this is a reflection of the new CMDB UI, a screenshot of it, right? Now, we implement it as a separate UI because we have some customers who are using the CMDB independent of the ITSM applications. That's why we initially started out building this as a separate user interface for these personas. You can, of course, easily cross-launch from Smart IT, which looks very similar, right, into the CMDB UI. We do eventually even plan to include more of the widgets here that we use in the CMDB UI within Smart IT itself, embedding those widgets. That hasn't happened yet, but that is part of the roadmap. But there is, as I stated, a completely new experience for CMDB, and we definitely recommend that you would have a look at it and evaluate it. And then again, you can easily, move from Smart IT to that CMDB UI for any use cases that require CMDB views, right? Again, that comes with every Remedy platform CMDB release. You'll automatically have this new CMDB UI. You don't need to install anything separate on that, right?
Thank you.
will move to our next caller. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Hi, Peter.
No, I think Sorry, I think the call was disrupted for a second. Can you repeat your question, please?
I'm so sorry, Peter. This is George Payne with Brightstar Systems. I was just curious about the new location attributes. So is that something that's going to be in the AST attributes form? What are they going to be all about? Is it about rack location or what?
I probably have to tab into some of the backup here that people that are on the line as well. And I want to see whether, I'm not sure whether Stephen has joined the call and could answer it.
These are actually, this is Antonio Vargas from BMC. These are actually attributes that are in the CDM. So they are on the BMC location class. These wouldn't be in the AST attributes.
Ah, okay. Thank you.
And we will take our next question. Caller, your line is open. Please check your mute function.
Yeah, hello. This is Paul with Doosan. My question is about the cognitive capabilities. Are those now available on-prem without any additional services, or do we need to subscribe to additional services for that?
So the cognitive service continues to be a cloud service. Again, it's called BMC Helix Cognitive Automation. The main reason is that we rely today on IBM Watson, and that itself is a cloud service. So the data would anyway have to go out to the cloud, and it allows also us to innovate faster in this very fast-moving new area. So from that perspective, again, the cognitive machine learning service that we offer is a cloud service, right? And that's the only option, but you can connect it to both Helix ITSM in the cloud as well as on-premise Remedy ITSM, right? Both of that is possible.
Is there expansion beyond Watson to use other chat solutions?
So we do look at other options. As of today, it's only IBM Watson. We do have, as part of our roadmap, a plan to offer multiple different choices. That's one of the reasons why we have this abstraction layer in the middle. So the interaction between the ITSM system and the cognitive service would remain the same, but in the back end we could plug in different providers. We do evaluate those options right now. Again, that is something that we do look at. Now again, you can use that. I don't think it's rocket science. We make it fairly easy to train the system and use it, and it's well documented. I don't think you need services in terms of professional services, but the machine learning itself is a cloud service, and that remains at least for the foreseeable future, right?
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And we will move to our next question.
Hello, hi, this is Nandika. I wanted to know about, you explained about the half-yearly releases, the major releases on AR ITSM. But we also see those patches that get released afterwards. So are they also following a schedule, or is that on a need basis? This is just for us to, plan in advance, like, do I want to wait for X number of patch or not?
So the patches are not scheduled at regular interval, as you stated. They are generated on an as-need basis. Sometimes we've done multiple ones, sometimes just one. It depends really. Again, there's no firm schedule on that side. With the feature releases, we do kind of have regular release schedules so that it's predictable for you, again, when the next release comes out in August, right? But on the patches side, it's a bit more flexible, right?
Would you release patches for the previous version also, even after the next version has come out?
We've done that occasionally. It depends really, again, on a need basis, so to speak. So on the Smart IT side, for example, I believe we've recently released patches for older versions as they were still used. Now we don't go too far back. Again, usually, we do a number of patches, get to a stable state, and then and then stay at that stable state. But sometimes, yes, on an as-need basis, we've done that in the past. Right?
Okay. Is there a statement like you go like one version behind or 2 or 3 versions behind on a need basis? So is there a policy or something like that, or?
Not a hard policy. I mean, there's a policy in general around full versus limited support that is documented, right? But again, when it comes to patch generation, there's no hard and fast rule, right? We really evaluate the need and again, are we at a stable state or not, and then determine that, and then the fact whether we release a patch or not is determined on that, right?
Okay. Just one request. The first question that you answered about Smart IT, right, that it is evolving and you also have plans to add more features into it, like you explained that some customers have created completely new screens, and at the moment those things cannot be visible on Smart IT. So some of these are posing real challenges for us in rolling out Smart IT, even though we can get a lot of interest from the users in wanting to use Smart IT, but some of these are becoming practical bottlenecks. And then you also mentioned about some functionality that is already available with expressions and provider actions. My request would be, is there a Pulse blog entry? I mean, not just the BMC documentation, because there it does not tell you can use it in these ways. But could there be a Pulse entry that one of your experts posts that we can actually take it to the customer and say, so you can use it in these ways, so can you now go and make a plan for it to roll out Smart IT?
Yeah, thanks for the feedback. So yes, we did discuss, to take your second point first, we did discuss a little bit how to provide more guidance. There's actually, I think, 1 or 2 community posts that explored, for example, when we did not have the copy change action available. Now it's out of the box, but half a year ago it wasn't available. That explored how you could use provider actions to trigger or build a custom copy change function. So there are individual posts, but I'll take your feedback that we need to do a better job at enabling and really explaining the power behind these provider actions, for example, right? Certainly take that as a feedback. And yes, again, certainly take your other feedback as well around Smart IT. As we know, again, sometimes our customers want more. Now we believe, again, with parallel deployment options that are available for Smart IT, right? You can run it in parallel to the existing UI. There are very flexible deployment options, right? Some companies may use Smart IT only for the mobile portion. Some companies may use it only for certain personas, let's say the frontline service desk, which may have fewer customizations. So overall, there's a lot of flexibility in how you can roll it out. As we continue to build out the capabilities, right? But certainly aware of some of the challenges, and we are, again, heavily focused on building this out, both in terms of functional capabilities as well as in terms of the tailoring capabilities, right? Again, thanks for your feedback on that.
Thank you.
And moving on to our next telephone question. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Hi, this is Lamberson from Ericsson. I have a question with respect to the CMDB. In the earlier question, any custom workflow, if you write on the CMDB forms, like a base element forms, it's not triggering on when it's reconciled. You need to write the workflow in a base development mode instead of best practice. Is that addressed in this new release? Hello?
Yeah, I have to admit I'm not too familiar with that challenge itself, Antonio, or anybody else. any comments you have. Otherwise, we probably may have to take it offline and respond to it in a written format. I want to check whether any of the experts on the call can comment on it.
Can we repeat the question?
Okay, so the custom workflow is written on the base element or any CMDB forms. It's not triggering when any reconciliation is happening. It's required to written on the base development mode instead of best practice. So this was raised long back, and the BMC, I got a confirmation from BMC that it has to be in any customer flow need to be in base development mode instead of best practice. This will have an impact on upgrading our systems. So is this addressed in the new release where we can write our customer flow in a best practice that can be executed during the reconciliation of flows on the CMDB forms?
So customizing the CMDB forms directly is not supported, nor recommended, nor you shouldn't do.
No, I'm not. I'm talking about the workflow, like filters. No, I'm talking about the filters. I'm not talking about the adding the new field or any changing the fields. That I understand we have to go via class manager. I'm talking about to use the existing fields and write the filters. The filter is not triggering when we write in the best practice.
So just to clarify, you're saying that if you create the filter in overlay, as an overlay, it doesn't trigger. It will only trigger if you create it against the base mode. Is that correct?
Okay, so there is no overlay in the base elements form. It's just we have a filter. We have written our own custom filter to do some manipulation based out of transactional data, and that is not triggering on the reconciliation when it is written on the best practice mode.
Can you go ahead in the Q&A if you could send the question in there or in chat, and then we'll go ahead and follow up with you on this, as Peter mentioned. Just we want to make sure we understand it properly.
Okay. I'll type over there.
Thank you.
And we will move to our next telephone question.
My question was answered. It was asked and answered. Thank you.
And moving to our next caller, please go ahead.
Yeah, hello, this is Paul with Doosan again. There has been many requests for enhancements to the filtering capabilities in Smart IT. I didn't see any demonstration of improvements in that space. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, there are no specific enhancements in 19.02. It is a topic that we are looking at actively and plan to do improvements for the next release, but nothing in 19.02 specifically. Right? We had introduced, if you recall, the option to use custom fields as columns and filters. Again, this release, no improvement in that specific area. We're looking at the next release as a theme around filtering for the console.
Okay, specifically around specifically around filtering on products or the prodcats or the opcats. Still not possible, it appears.
Yeah, there's a few workarounds you could potentially use, right, by creating a custom field, getting the categorization information in there and use that. Again, these are workarounds. It's not any means a claim that this is perfect, but again, as I stated, for the next round, console improvements and filtering is a topic that we evaluate, right, for the next release. As always, it's subject to change, right? But it is something we're actively discussing. Right?
Okay, we'll explore the custom field workaround.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Matt, do we have any more questions in queue?
Looks like we just had one last one enter the queue. Please go ahead.
Okay.
Hello. Is BMC planning any kind of ML enhancements in regards to discovery? Hello.
Antonio, that's probably something for.
Sorry, I'm trying to reach for the mute button. So yes, certainly from a discovery perspective, we're continuing to introduce content, via our TKU processes. So, currently as part of 19.02, there wasn't any big major features that were introduced, but we certainly have been continuing to expand on our storage network and cloud content. Please look to April TKU as we were going to be introducing quite a bit of stuff there. So we'll keep you posted.
Okay, sure. Thanks.
Okay, this brings us to the bottom of the hour and the end of our webinar. And so at this time, I wanted to thank you all for joining us today, and thank you for the presenters and panelists for helping out. These are some of the self-help and contacting BMC via our YouTube channel, as well as the webinar schedule. And also a lot of information can be found in our product pages, usual ways to contact technical support via web, phone, email, as well as our social channels. And at this time, just wanted to wrap it up and say thank you for supporting the program. And this will conclude our session today.